But for now, economic growth in Sub-Saharan Africa is estimated to have contracted by 2% in 2020. This is contained in the World Bank's latest Africa Pulse, the Future of Work in Africa report. The report notes that economic recovery hinges on countries deepening reforms that create jobs, encourage investment and enhance competitiveness. The bank is currently hosting a virtual briefing to launch the report. We take you live there.
But even more interesting, Dimpo, what we are noticing is in Africa is that we do have a number of new applications that can help providing those skills to people in Africa, including those with literal literacy. Applications that can teach people how to read, applications that can actually teach people through messages on their cell phone, even if those cell phones are not smart. Applications that can teach them how to do accounting for their small businesses. All those are happening in Africa. So yes, we do see the digital being inclusive in Africa.
And since so many Africans are benefiting from digital technology, what is the recipe for a digital transformation that really benefits all Africans?
Dimpo, as you speak of recipe, I think I would bring 3 ingredients to that recipe. The first is infrastructure. The second is the regulatory framework. And the third is the skills provision. And I could add another ingredient which could actually be a catalyst is the youth. You know, while our access and use of digital technologies has increased with COVID-19, our infrastructure remains insufficient. The gap in infrastructure, in digital infrastructure between Sub-Saharan Africa and the rest of the world is still very large. And even within Africa, the gap between East Africa and West Africa is also large. So we need to invest even more in closing that gap in infrastructure, not only between countries, but also between men and women, because there is also that gender divide in digital access, and certainly between large and small firms. That's about infrastructure. On the regulatory framework, Dimpo, the M-Pesa revolution in Kenya would not have happened without the right environment, the right regulation from the central bank, and the right regulation allowing private sector to step in, experiment, and deploy new innovations. That's what is lacking in many countries in Africa now, and we need to develop those regulatory frameworks that allow innovation to flourish. On the skill side, we've spoken about this. It's crucial for our countries to invest in human capital, education at all levels, but not only for the digital, but because investment in human capital, Dimpo, will allow African countries to limit the consequences, the long-lasting consequences of COVID, and maybe reverse the long-term consequence of COVID, as COVID is certainly creating the risk of more people, more than 40 million, probably being pushed below the poverty line in Africa. So investing in human capital would allow our countries to limit those long-lasting consequences. And this is also the case that with COVID, number of our girls are not coming back to school, which may have very, very long-lasting effect on their income, but also in their children's lives.
And speaking of young people and youth, I asked some of my colleagues in the Youth Transforming Africa network, which is an alumni network of the World Bank's Block for Dev competition winners, to engage us in this conversation. And the question that I have for you is, how do young people prepare themselves for a competitive future world of work if they don't have access to the internet, to infrastructure, and digital technology?
Dimple, let me first say that access is going to be critical, and countries need to invest massively to allow the youth to increase access to the digital. But access is not just about the device. Access is also about collective use, and in most cities in Africa, the youth can actually get access through share facilities. And I think I would focus more on what the youth can actually do with this tool. How can they leverage this tool for their own benefit? And I think that's probably what is the most important, because in the coming years, more and more young people would be able to access internet, in a way or the other. What is really important is how they leverage this to create their own jobs. That's digital entrepreneurship. And we see a lot of dynamism in the continent. The second is how they leverage the digital tool to actually hold their government accountable and improve the delivery of services, including education, including infrastructure investment. So young people, who are the large majority of African population, should leverage the digital to enforce transparency in the management, limit corruption in our countries, to ensure that governments invest our scarce resources in the right infrastructure, in the right skills that would unleash the potential of our youth. That's certainly essential. And I would also think the African youth could leverage the digital to impact the world. With the digital, it no longer matters that much where you are physically. You can actually contribute to work everywhere else in the world, and that's how the future of work looks promising.
Now, Albert, I'm going to tie my last two questions together, and I'm going to ask you, first of all, what concerns you about this report? And then lastly, what gives you hope about this report?
Dimple, as we complete this 23rd edition of the Africa Pulse, I have three concerns. The first is the second wave that currently is second wave of COVID that's currently affecting Africa, and that is 40% deadlier than the first one. So my concern is that our populations would loosen their adherence to basic health protocols, would stop practicing social distancing, would lower their guard vis-a-vis COVID, because it's not over. And if we lower our guard, then our growth prospects would not be as bright as we have discussed. So that's my first concern. It's about COVID, about the second wave that is certainly more contagious and with variants that are certainly deadlier. The second concern I have coming out of this exercise, Dimple, is vaccine nationalism or vaccine hoarding by OECD countries. I think there needs to be a global cooperation on vaccine. This is a global pandemic. The solution has to be global, and there is no reason why countries should pile up vaccines for more than 4 times their population and African countries cannot even access what they need to vaccinate 10% of the population. I think this is a big concern, and at the global level, we need to address that and come up with solutions, for Africa to be able to immunize and fastly its population before the end of 2021. The third concern I would have, Dimpo, is the debt situation that you mentioned. This is again a global phenomenon, and creditors are not only international institutions; they are bilateral, they are private creditors. So let's really speed up efforts at the global level to address this debt situation, especially when it's combined with a collapse in commodity prices. There's definitely a global issue there. On what makes me hopeful, well, the thing that makes me the most hopeful is how Africa is embracing the digital to change the future of work. What makes me hopeful is that the digital technologies are proving to be a game changer, not only in increasing productivity and the way we live, improving our lives in Africa, but also becoming a credible source of growth and job creation. That's really hopeful for me. But even more hopeful is the fact that Africa is the most youthful continent on earth. And with the dynamism that the youth brings, I'm absolutely confident that Africa will not only be able to leverage the digital to increase standard of living, I'm absolutely confident that Africa will be able to leapfrog and really lead the world in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. That does bring us to the end of our conversation. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your insights.
You're most welcome, Dimpo.
And thank you for watching as well as engaging with us on social media. Please do continue to connect with us and have the conversation using the hashtag Africa's Pulse. From myself, Dimpo Lekreu, it's goodbye. Kyabong.
Well, those were visuals from the World Bank as they released their Africa Pulse report.